Trump won the presidential election. Trump owns hotels. Lords of Vegas is a game about hotels. Told you there was a link. So last week I got to play the game Lords of Vegas by legendary designers Mike Selinker and James Earnest. The game plays between 2 to 4 players in about 16 minutes. Now I'm not going to go into the rules of the game. If you want to know the rules, it's probably best you go check out an actual how to play video, such as the very excellent one made by Shut Up and Sit Down. I'll wait for you. Hurry up. Now that you know how to play the game, or if you've just watched on. The game is essentially not just about casinos, but tries to embody the richness of the gambling aspect. And I myself do not enjoy randomness in games all that much. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy it at all. I enjoy it in shorter games, and I like a level of randomness throughout any game that I play. However, what I don't like is games that are really dependent on dice rolling the right pair of dice or the right numbers or drawing the right card over a long period of time. When I think about my games that go for longer an hour, I tend to like games that reward strategy and tactics. So games like Twilight Struggle, which does have random elements to it, such as the randomness of the cards you draw at any given time, as well as when you're doing coup attempts or realignment attempts, the dice you roll provides a genuine random element to the game. However, over the course of the game, strategies and tactics will always win out. In a game of Twilight Struggle, if you are a better player than your opponent, you will win. So when it comes to Lords of Vegas, the whole game is about gambling. And as someone who doesn't enjoy gambling myself, not that I'm particularly against it, I just find it rather dull and boring. Now, I know that a lot of people do enjoy that gambling aspect, and one of the reasons that gambling works so well is that there's this huge risk involved with gambling. In reality, one of the reasons that people enjoy the randomness of a roulette table isn't because of the complexity or because of the decision making, but essentially because of the risk of their own money disappearing or their own money coming back to them in multiples. But in board games, for me, having that there isn't thoroughly engaging or interesting at all. And so I tend to avoid games that have high stakes probability or run that sort of level of risk. But after playing Lords of Vegas, a game that I probably held off on playing for obviously way too long, I was thoroughly encapsulated and enjoyed that game. It was a lot of fun. Now, they weren't the high-five moments of a good co-op playing out well. It was the high-five moments of, oh, I can't believe that happened. But why I enjoyed it was of real interest to me because I really don't enjoy highly random games. So I really wanted to explore, why did I enjoy this game so much? In terms of the game's mechanics, there is an area control element, and area control is not only one of my favorite game mechanics, it is perhaps one of my favorite game mechanics that just keeps getting more enjoyable for me. I just seem to like it the more I play it. My first favorite game is Twilight Struggle. My second favorite game is Small World. I don't think it's any coincidence that they're both area control games. And this game has area control elements to it. Now, it's not area control in the sense of the two games I just listed, or perhaps in the sense of many other area control games that you might know of. The area control does come into the fact that throughout the game, as you probably saw in the rules or as you know through playing, you randomly get assigned a card which you can put a lot on, and then you can choose to build on it. But you also have the option of sprawling out and taking control of lots around your territory. There's two area control elements happening here. So you've got the control over the size of the casino, which provides you with the option of getting money when that card arises. But there's also being in charge of the casino, having the boss character or having the highest ranked dice on the board, and that directly equates to the points. So you need the money to continue building casinos and to expanding and to actually function throughout the game effectively. But without being the boss of the hotels, you aren't scoring any points, which is the end part of the game, is having the most points. The area control also directly impacts on the points in that once you get to a certain point, you've got those threshold barriers to get through. So you can't score the next point unless you've got at least 2 linked casinos. Further on in the game, you can't score points unless there's 3 linked casinos. So having the area is important for money and points later on, and being the owner is also important. So having these two areas of control over the board really creates a lot of tension throughout the game. But the other side of this game is strongly economic, in that you're trying to acquire more money so that you can expand your fortune, which gives you the capability of scoring points later on. There are randomizers within the game, and the game has a lot of different ways of bringing randomness further into the game. Now let's have a look at some of those random elements of the game, because they form part of the backbone of what makes this game competitive. Firstly, you have the deck of cards, which every time a person has their turn, they're drawing a card, which is completely random, but there's some things to consider with that randomness, such as how many of those cards have come out. Because if I know that 5 white casinos have already scored and 1 brown casino, then when it comes to my building phase, I'm probably more likely to invest in the brown casinos on the basis that they're more likely to score. Now, mixed into the deck is 4 pay the strip cards, so that any hotels along that strip will pay out. So it's really important to acquire property on the front and link it to your hotels at the back. Remember, that's only happening 1 and 4. Yeah, actually take about a quarter of the deck out of the game by putting the endgame card on a random quarter, which means that even though you're following the randomness of the cards coming out, and if 5 whites have paid out and only 1 brown, I could invest in brown only to discover that the majority of brown are in the bottom quarter of the deck and will never come into play. So while you're playing the averages, there's no real sense that that's a guaranteed lock. Let's look at some more of the random elements. In terms of managing the casinos, it's the highest die in the casino that determines who the manager is. And at some point, I can restructure that hotel and we can all roll our dice. And that's an entirely random outcome as to who gets to be the manager at the end. And so it becomes a game of probability. Am I willing to pay the $1 million for every pip in the hotel if I only have 1 die and my opponent has 3 die? Or am I willing to try and link up this hotel to another hotel in the hopes of increasing the number of dice I have invested in the hotel so that my probability is better when it comes to restructuring? But even then, you could restructure with 4 dice versus their 2 and still not become out as the manager. So that is an entirely random element of the game. And then there is the insanely random gambling at casinos. I can gamble at your casino and I can bet up to 5 million per tile. And all I have to do is roll a number outside of the highest probability numbers. In terms of probability, 5, 6, 7, 8 are the most likely to appear if I roll 2 dice together. But if I can roll numbers outside of that, then I get paid out big time. In fact, dollar for dollar, which is a huge payout at a casino. And factored into that is the very low probability roll of getting a 2 or a 12, which pays out double. And so gambling at the casino can be incredibly risky because the likelihood in terms of probability is that you will roll a 5, a 6, a 7, or an 8, which means you just lose your money. But if you don't, then you get paid out big time, which is a huge reward. So how is it that as someone who doesn't enjoy randomness in games, who likes to be rewarded for strategy and tactics, can still love and have fun with this game? Now, I know what some people will say is that at some point you just have to let games be games and just have fun for the sake of it. But I don't think that's why I like this game, because I think this game is actually rich in decision making. I think this game does reward strategy and tactics. However, I think factored into the build of this game is a very clever sense of mechanics where if you are willing to pay higher stakes, you can walk away with the game. Let's talk in terms of the strategy and tactics involved in this game. In terms of the scoring, if you don't have 2 hotels linked together, by the time you get to the end of that first line of scoring, you cannot score. What this means is that if you haven't town planned properly, if you haven't either sprawled, if you haven't randomly been assigned a hotel next to another one, then you're just going to get stuck there. Every time your hotel scores, if you don't have those 2 hotels there, you just sit there. You don't make any score out of this at all. So that's a big factor, and that factors into how I plan my town, what moves I make, how I invest my money. If I'm not willing to start trying early on to both get hotels and to get two hotels linked together, then I know that I'm going to be hindering myself in later turns from scoring meaningful points. So having to deal with the randomness of what lots get assigned to me and how I build my hotels is a tactical decision-making process, but must factor into a strategic outcome. I am working towards ensuring that later on I can score those points. I can continue moving up the point tracker. And if I don't, then I'm going to run into real issues. And in terms of good strategy, I also have to be continually aware of what hotels I'm actually the manager of if I want to keep scoring those points. At any time, I can restructure a hotel and take back the managerial role, or I can have the managerial role taken entirely away from it. But there are ways around that. I can build hotels specifically out of the way of others. Or if you're really clever and you have a different colored hotel next to someone else's hotel and you're the boss of that hotel, then you can change the colors of the tiles. Now that may seem like a pretty innocuous effect. It may be useful if you want to change from a color that's had a lot of cards come out of to a color that's had few cards come out of. But there is also the strategic advantage it offers in that you change the hotel color to the color of the hotel you're right next to, and suddenly a merger takes place. If you're the manager in your hotel and you've got a higher number than the manager of the hotel you merge with, you're suddenly the boss, you're suddenly scoring points, and most likely you've got enough points to get over those threshold barriers. So despite the fact that randomness is playing a factor in terms of who is boss, I can actually make good tactical or strategic moves that ultimately bring about a superiority on board presence for myself. So what about gambling in other people's hotels? The fact that I could put down $20 million and take everything away from you. Well, that's actually one of the parts I like the most. Not because of how random it is, but because it's a genuine high-risk gamble. In terms of stakes of play, when I mentioned that a lot of people enjoy gambling because of the investment they make, well, in a game sense, that investment is equally as real and equally as impacting. Now, if I'm in a situation where I know that I'm going to keep missing out on scoring and I'm not going to make any advancements through the game, but I don't have enough money to do the actions I need to gain control of the board, I can take that high-level risk, bet what I have against whatever money you have, see if I can turn the tables. Of course, as I said, high risk. So if you lose big. If you win big. So I found that people weren't as willing to take that high stakes risk because it could cripple them through the game. I think the reason that this game just appeals to me so well is that although there is this strong random element or elements built into the game, they don't dominate the game, and I can still be rewarded as a strategic or tactical thinker. Those elements also can play huge dividends for anyone willing to take the risk. And that's an interesting idea to me, that this game essentially requires people to be willing to risk something if they want to win. Although I feel it's entirely probable that you could play a safer game and still get by, but I think the margins would be even tighter. And in some senses, this even acts as a bit of a makeup mechanic, where getting behind doesn't have to be such a huge disadvantage if you're willing to risk a bit more. So unlike other games where the makeup mechanic really just diminishes the fact that someone has worked much harder to get in front, this one says, well, you can still make it, but it could also end you in the game. And I think it really added to the tension of what was going on. I was so thoroughly impressed with this game. I got to the end of it and I was desperate to play it again. Unfortunately, time did not permit, but it's definitely going to be a game that I can see myself playing a lot in the future, and it's one I'm clearly going to be introducing to the kids at school because they are going to love it. Of course, it came from the genius minds of Mike Selinker and James Earnest, two of the best in the industry at the moment. But they really showed me that I can have fun with highly random elements and still feel rewarded as a strategic and tactical thinker. For that reason, I can highly recommend this game and know that it'll be hitting the table a lot in weeks to come. Speaking of games, the core mechanic came out on Thursday where we talked about the classic game Boggle. There was a bit of a special guest appearance by a former colleague. Now, while I know that Boggle isn't the hottest ticket item in the board gaming industry today. Doing the research really opened me up to the fact of why this game is popular, was popular, and still has huge tournaments running today. And also triggered my teacher brain to thinking, oh my goodness, I could be using this game as significant learning experience, as well as having fun. And I'm finding that a lot actually through doing this research for the core mechanic, is that there are a lot of games I've overlooked previously simply because I considered them stale, because they were games from my past, kids games that I just didn't like the theme of. And so I've really appreciated coming across games like this, and getting into Boggle really was worthwhile, and I hope you'll check that out. And of course, this week we've also got more reviews and articles coming up on www.gamerpalooza.com. There are of course other contributors than just myself, so there's a lot of good content going up there. I recommend you check it out. And of course, this week we'll be releasing a few more Dice Tower segments, so go check that out. But look, thanks for watching. If you like what we're doing here, please hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It's great to have you as part of our community. Until next time, my name's Dave Adams, and that's what's happening now.